Welcome back to the Kitchen Table Talks here on the Pulse Network, everyone. I'm Tyler Piper. And so, Joe, when I was handed the rundown, I noticed something was a little bit different as far as the question of the week goes. Kind of explain that for me. Well, what am I looking at right now?
I would love to. So we enter into a little partnership this week for the month of November with Biz Filings. And I know everyone who watches the show knows a little bit about bizfilings.com. And ironically, it's one of the ways that Chris Brogan and I met as we were talking about growing the business that was Human Business Works, and I directed him to bizfilings.com. So it just so happened that their agency in Madison, Wisconsin, had been watching the show, saw that the connection was there, knew we talked about it, and thought it would be fun for us to participate in that small business roundtable. So if you were to go to BizFilings' Facebook page, you would see that each week there is the ability to ask questions of not only Chris, but other business leaders. And then we basically take this section of the show and use it to answer those questions, as well as give more feedback from the tweets to more, to do a better job answering the question in a more well-rounded way. So awesome. You have in your little hand this week, the first one, and we actually have two just in case. So why don't you go ahead, if you don't mind, and you can read the first one from Sarah, and then we can do our best to answer it and see what we've got out there in the world of Twitter.
Totally. Absolutely, without a question. So yeah, this one coming by way of Biz Filings from Sarah. She's saying, hi Chris. So asking Chris, saying my business, Sarah DeSalt, aka SarahFit.com, is new and primarily built upon social media. It's doing well without any advertising, but I'm curious if it's something I should test. I'm reading the 4-Hour Work Week, and they suggest using advertising, but is this appropriate for primarily social media-based blogger brands? So, what do you think about that right there, Joe? I'll just hand it over to you.
Sure. I think that's an interesting point. And immediately when I read that, our good friend Mitch Joel comes to mind, and his whole idea of with and not instead of. He's one who doesn't want to see focused efforts in only one vein, like that's a wasted effort. However, we have a retail business in the restaurant industry that almost solely uses social and new media to reach our customers. So I guess I would say, the key word in that question for me was test. Of course, test away. Using Facebook and the ability to buy targeted ads, and Facebook is a really inexpensive way to see if you can find some additional people who are interested in your brand. And I've realized that that's another recommendation to stay within social media. But I think that the most important part is wherever you choose to place marketing or advertising, whichever you choose, finding the medium where people actually are is the most important thing. Shooting blindly in the dark, well, maybe there are some people interested in my company over here, isn't going to help you at all. I mean, you've got some history with the group that you've got. Obviously, you have some success using social media to advertise. What's wrong with talking to those customers about some of their other interests? People want to be where other people are of similar interests. Maybe that will help you down that path. What do you think, Rob?
Well, I love this question, and what I hear her asking is, or talking about, is the medium. The medium is working for me here, and should I try another medium? And I'm going to ask her, what about that medium is working for her? What is it that she did that helped her to find success in social media? And take that and apply it to, and look to apply it in another place. Test it exactly like you said. All of your advice is spot on. But if you're going to replicate something, it's replicating what worked in social media that I would start looking at and focus on that as she moves and shifts. Because clearly it's not just that social media was working well and let's try something else. It's something about her presence there that worked really well.
And you know where I'm going to go next. The other question I would have for Sarah is why? Why are you interested in other mediums? What's the point of it? What's the goal of you setting out to consider other mediums to advertise, other platforms to advertise? What are you hoping to get out of it? Just like you said, are you trying to duplicate those same results, or are you trying to grow sales in a different area? So I think why is a big part of the answer to your question.
Absolutely, and I think she could, and that's not to say that there's a wrong answer there. It's just
Sure.
asking yourself that question, and then once you're solid on that answer, then making your moves.
Tyler, have we got some other people contributing via Twitter to answers to Sarah's question?
Yeah, we do have a couple people starting to chime in right now. The first one, of course, we almost hear him every single time on news for the news of the week to start on. But we've got Dave Cutler jumping in. He's saying, just because one method's working doesn't mean you can't implement other methods that could supplement current efforts. So, in reminding, Dave used the hashtag KTCO, so I want you guys to remember, keep using that hashtag to answer that. So, Joe, I'm going to hand that back over to you. What do you think of Dave Cutler's thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, it basically echoes what both Rob and I were just saying. Ultimately, there's no reason not to test, especially if you can find ways to test marketing that are very low cost. And something else I might suggest is let's find some partnerships. What are the people who are interested in what you do? What are their other interests, and how can you partner with maybe another media partner so it all makes more sense, and you're building a little bit more of a centrally focused outlet for your customers. What do you think, Rob?
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
All right, guys, we definitely have some more tweets coming in right now, so we're going to go ahead and bring them up. Let's go ahead and get right to them right now. What do we got here? This one from Bernie saying, answer. Some marketing methods take time and patience to determine whether it works if they're not be flexible enough to change. So this is a little bit different, guys. What do you think of this, Rob? I'll hand this one over to you first.
So I think I'm hearing her say a couple things. You got to be patient, but you have to, it has to be an assessment process of being able to recognize when something isn't panning out the way that you hoped. And it reminds me kind of Raul's list, talking about the fact that he has sort of process. It goes back to the question of, why am I doing this? What's the intent? What's the purpose of this? And once you have that nailed and you know what your parameters are, what you're looking for, I think that will help in the assessment process when you notice that it's not working, because you'll know why you're there and what you were trying to accomplish. So I love that question, that response from Bernie.
I think it also highlights the reason why she's so attracted and I'm so attracted, and so lots of people are so attracted to social media, because the results, the interaction is right there. It's sort of proof that what you're doing is working. And that's the hardest parts about marketing and advertising, is the placement of an ad, waiting to see what the impressions are, hoping that your ad in a magazine worked. I actually this morning when Chris and I did a little bit of talking about these questions, he even mentioned some sort of using billboards to advertise your company. I'm not sure why that was on the top of his mind. I was surprised to hear him say it, but we've heard him talk about billboards before. But I think that's the reason why social media is so attractive for so many small businesses, is it's just so immediate and such a great connection to your customers. Tyler, what else you got there on the Twitter?
Well, what else we wanted to do, going back to what you were saying before about, people submitting questions too, is we wanted to kind of get to some more questions as well. So another question coming in by way of Facebook. And, Rob, we're going to kind of direct this one towards you a little bit more, just because I know that you do work with nonprofits quite a bit. So this one right here saying, hi, Chris, I'm the founder of a site called, I can't quite read this, to be honest with you, violenceonsilence.com, and we've, you know what, honestly, guys, to be completely honest, I cannot see it up on the screen because it's it's jumping all over the place on my screen. So for the folks at home, I hope that you guys can read this question. Joe, I know you've seen this question before. If you could kind of reiterate for me, because I myself can't see it here in studio.
I will. I remember the question pretty well, and what the person was asking had to do with, they were just starting a new nonprofit, and they were considering how best to advertise for it. And once again, around the social media platform, if they were going to use social media, what are some of the best ways to do it without losing the focus of their cause? I think they were trying to not sound, too salesy. And you're right, Tyler. Rob can speak to this uniquely well. So please take it away, Rob.
Taking. So what it makes me think of is just that it goes back to how we use social media in any business, which is and talking about it sounding too salesy. Fundraising really is a sale. I mean, you're selling in an investment in a mission, in a story, in a purpose that your nonprofit stands for. So thinking about being there before the sale, thinking about specifically cultivating visibility. And so when I think about using social media and nonprofits, it's all about cultivating visibility and finding ways to engage with people who might be interested in your story and using it as a storytelling tool. And over time, you're going to earn leverage and earn the ability to be able to ask at a certain point. And you start to figure that out. And if you're familiar with sales, there are things that you know, and you have to ask. I mean, Carrie was there last week, talking about finally when you need the money, you have to ask. But you want to do it because you've been there, cultivating visibility, find ways to create value for people by helping them to understand what's going on there, the story that you're trying to tell, and what you're trying to solve. And then that's when you can get to the ask. But as a resource, I mean, the first person that comes to mind is Mark Pittman, who is one of the leaders at 501missionplace.com. We run a company or a community just for nonprofit leaders, very much like kitchen table companies for small business owners, nonprofit leaders. We have 501 Mission Place, and Mark and I and John Hayden are all there to in the community participating, and members do very similar things to KTC and helping each other with some of these tough questions. So these are the types of questions we're over there. Mark runs fundraisingcoach.com. He is by far, I think, one of the foremost experts in nonprofit fundraising, and he's a resource I dip into all the time when I'm struggling with a question around this. But love this question. But to me, on the social media side, it just gets back to cultivating visibility and being human in your interactions, just the way that you would with any social media effort, I think.
Yeah, I love the idea of taking a nonprofit and making it more human. That's the nonprofits that our businesses work with all have a person behind them that I have a relationship with, for sure. The other I think company that you and I talked a little bit about looking at for a good example of using content as the main sort of lead to draw attention to the nonprofit was, his last name is Horvath. Is that right? Mark Horvath?
Yeah, Mark Horvath with invisiblepeople.tv. Mark is a homeless advocate and was homeless himself, and now has made it his mission to bring attention to solving the crisis of homelessness. I just got a chance to spend some time with him in LA, but invisiblepeople.tv, he features videos and interviews with people who are homeless, and you immediately get a sense of it. It just sort of takes away that barrier. You get to hear these stories, and I have to say, they feel sometimes only half steps away from our life. Some interesting circumstances that didn't go the right way, and sure enough, these entire families. So he really kind of breaks that down and brings you right inside. So he does an excellent job with that.
Yeah, I really like this style of asking questions. I think when we've got lots and lots of tweets pouring in, we probably won't be able to get to 2 every week, but our new relationship with bizfilings.com and their Facebook page and the roundtable is a pretty exciting one. Thank you so much, Rob, for adding your expertise to the nonprofit question.